Good morning. It is 8:15 a.m. on Sunday. Yeah, February 17th, 2019. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. I woke up feeling a little out of it this morning. Still kind of trying to shake that off, but it's Sunday, which means I'm continuing my rewatch of Gravity Falls with season 1, episode 5, no, 15. I was starting to say 5 because as I rewatch it from Amazon Prime, they break it up into volumes rather than seasons, and so it is volume 2, episode 5, even though originally season 1, episode 15. Trivia you don't care about. The episode is entitled The Deep End, in which Mabel falls in love with a merman and then helps him escape. And uh, it's a fun episode. Lots of um, you know yeah, I am brain slow this morning. Just to let you all know, I'm sorry. uh, so in this episode, we begin with it's the hottest day of the summer, according to Toby Determined on the radio. And everyone is, lying around complaining that it's too hot. Lots of fun jokes about it being too hot. Wax Stan is melting. Uh, you know, it's just everyone's too hot. So they decide to all go to the pool. Sure, why not? It's classic, opening for a beach or pool episode of any show. And then as they get to the pool, we have various plots for everybody, right? So Seuss is mostly just hanging out, although, so we don't get a lot from Seuss, but the moment later in the episode where Dipper is complaining that it just seems like everyone is breaking into the pool at night. It's fun. It's like, is Seuss here? And then Seuss has just climbed over the fence for no reason that we are aware of. Like, we're not even presented with any reason. But he also promptly turns around to leave when Dipper tells him to go home. So it's like, why was he even there? That's the joke, of course, and it's a good one. But so we have Mabel and Mermando as a plot where she is immediately intrigued by this mysterious stranger in the pool and goes to try to make friends with him. And this is continuing to play off this idea that she's boy crazy and has a new crush every week or whatever. But it sets up in this episode this idea that she's been trying for a first kiss and just keeps messing things up. And so we can get to a payoff for that in this episode. But in the meantime, of course, Dipper learns that Wendy is working as a lifeguard, which is interesting. Just the episode makes no attempt whatsoever to explain her working as a lifeguard and at the Mystery Shack. I guess it doesn't matter really, but there's just no line at all to even try to justify any of that. But so, Dipper's plot line is like, oh, he could be assistant lifeguard. That means enforcing the rules, and that, puts him in conflict with Mabel, which is a nice little setup. Especially given that the only reason he wants to be assistant lifeguard is to be close to Wendy, and so they're both kind of motivated by their own crushes, that's actually a pretty clever little setup there. Also, it gives us the opportunity to have Mr. Poolcheck as a side character who is kind of marvelously unhinged. He evokes old Ren and Stimpy characters, I think, in the sense that he is sort of just irrationally passionate. Ooh, that's kind of a fun turn of phrase. Irrationally passionate about enforcing the pool rules, and yet immediately embracing Dipper when Dipper promises to join, like with very little interrogation, because of course we know that Dipper has just even asked for the job because of course Wendy is presenting this as an opportunity to break lots of rules. And it actually kind of continues a theme of Wendy, by and large, being able to do whatever she wants, whenever she wants, without any consequences at all. Although I guess she does get fired at the end of this episode. She doesn't seem too broken up about it. And so Mr. Poolcheck is kind of, he's a fun character, and he actually shows up in crowd scenes here and there in the other rest of the series, but just, showing him as this guy who's like doing finger push-ups and he eats a whistle later and he tastes the pool water to, I guess, make sure the chemistry's right, and just he's intense. He's a fun character to just kind of be this menacing presence throughout the episode. And that's good stuff. And then, of course, we also have Stan and his battle with Gideon over the best pool chair. And one of the things that is surprisingly transgressive in this is that it's like we can understand and we can probably see coming that as soon as Stan is talking about how this pool chair is the best and I can't believe nobody else is sitting there yet, and, we could predict perhaps that someone, if not necessarily predicting Gideon, is going to compete with him for it. But he puts the towel that says property of Stan over the back before he goes to sit down. And then he does sit down, but Gideon's already there. But Gideon is not respecting the property of Stan towel, and then explicitly points out that he really only wants the chair because Stan wanted it, and that he knew full well what he was doing. And that feels surprisingly transgressive, right? It's not an ordinary cartoon conflict in the same way. It is literally all about Gideon just being that evil. And I don't know, that's surprisingly effective. I think that, that he didn't respect the property of Stan towel. It's just, it's one thing to get there first and have a legitimate claim, but the show makes it explicit that he is violating the claim on purpose. He was not there first, but he managed to get into the chair first, and therefore he's claiming it. And and so that sets up, of course, Stan's wonderful plan that, he'll break in at night and just lay in the chair all night so that he can be the first in it in the morning. Good stuff. But of course, we also have Stan discover, by virtue of him trying to get Gideon out of the chair, he gets sent to pool jail. And pool jail is kind of a fun concept, but primarily what's fun about it is the introduction of the idea that there's a solitary, and we see the kid behind the little pool filter, vent thing holding onto the bars, and then the implication in the end credits that kid is there for a whole year or more. It's the nights that are the hardest, he says. And that's, it just makes me wonder. It's like, whoa, what did that kid do? And I think that's such a fun idea. Pool jail. So in any event, let's get back to our main story here, where Mabel, flirts with Mermando and discovers immediately that he has a terrible secret and he doesn't want to tell. And so it's playing a lot on the whole classic archetype of the mysterious brooding stranger and how attractive that can be to girls and so on. And so, but then we it doesn't string us along too long before realizing that he is a merman. And there's some fun stuff about Mabel, who, though well-intentioned, really doesn't get it in a lot of ways. Like, for one, there's the whole idea that she thinks Spanish is a mysterious fish person language because she just doesn't recognize it. And, it's a reminder that she didn't get French either when Gideon spoke it in the previous episode. And she also is like, when she's showing him a scrapbook of human things, she's really focused on, the legs. It's like, here's my legs in this picture, and here's me kicking Dipper's legs with my legs, and then he couldn't use his legs after that. Isn't that crazy? The idea that you don't have legs, and so that's so she's just really not understanding. And then there's the bit later where she's like, "You're so beautiful," is holding, like, got her hands, on the sides of his neck, and he's like, "Oh, my gills are coming with my gills." But at the same time, they do hit it off generally, and they're having fun, except that he's lonely because he misses his family of dolphins from the Gulf of Mexico. It's a little bit. I wonder about the creative decision that he has a family of dolphins instead of a family of other merpeople. I'm not sure where that came from. Like, why? Why does he not have other merpeople family instead of just the dolphins? I mean, it's one thing if they want him to be able to make the dolphin noises, sure, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not complaining. It's just weird, right? Anyway, he tells his whole sad story about, getting caught by fishermen, and then he ends up stuck in the pool, needs help to escape. But in the meantime, Mabel's attempts to help him escape put her in conflict with Dipper, who's trying to enforce the rules so he doesn't get fired, so he can keep hanging out with Wendy. Even though we see that he's already not enjoying this job as much as he thought, because Wendy keeps wanting him to break rules, but he's worried about getting in trouble with Mr. Poolcheck because his own natural inclination would be to want to follow the rules. And so it sets up the conflict pretty quickly of, like, Mermando is like, oh, no one can know about me being a merman, and that's why Mabel has to keep him a secret from Dipper, because I think that, we probably agree that, like, Dipper was on board as soon as he knew what the real deal was. And so, he even was willing to give Mermando reverse CPR, which involves getting a mouthful of water and then doing CPR on a merman, instead of just, why don't you just roll me into the lake? That's fun, too. And so the idea that Mermando has to be kept a secret, even from Dipper, is the opportunity to give us a little bit of a conflict in a chase sequence and all of that. But what's great, I think, overall at the end is this idea. First of all, the idea that Mermando needs the megaphone so that he can call his family from the lake, even though it would seem like this town that we're in would seem to be located in the Pacific Northwest somewhere, and Mermando's family is in the Gulf of Mexico, and the implication is that he's going to use the megaphone to call them. So, like, some of that doesn't really work, but I do very much like the whole bit about Wendy saying to Dipper, we have to give him the megaphone, even though it might mean you'll be fired, because don't you know what it's like when you care about someone and it could probably never work out, but you do anything for them anyway? And of course we see, without them making it explicit, that Dipper does know how that feels, because that's exactly his situation with Wendy. And I feel like in some ways it's the show's first real acknowledgement that Dipper and Wendy as a couple probably would never happen. It's probably just not going to work. He's got a crush on her, and so it's interesting to have the show be a little subtle like that. But in any event, he does understand, and so he does give up the megaphone, even though he knows that he gets fired as a result. And it turns out doing the right thing turned out to be good in this case, because Wendy also got fired because her free snack privileges she'd been abusing them, and she has even more snacks too. So it's a happy ending for everyone, and Mabel mysteriously gets letters in a bottle through the pool filter from the Gulf of Mexico. And it's so like she can be pen pals with Mermando still, and that's nice too. So that does it, I think, for this episode. So I'll be back next week to talk about the next episode, and in the meantime, I will talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.